Hey, this is Allie Edwards, and in today's video I'm going to take you through the process of beginning to build my Pieces of the Past notebook project. All throughout this week I am doing one prompt per day. So this is using the Pieces of the Past notebook, and it has 7 different prompts, so that's the prompts that we're following along this week. No matter when you are watching this video, if this project speaks to you in one way or another, you can jump in at any time to tell some different stories from your own past. Check out the link below that will take you to a blog post that outlines the different prompts and includes a PDF if you would like to just print something out and then jot down some notes. So working within a notebook, you can see past approaches to similar projects in our Pieces of Life series here on YouTube as well as on the blog. So the first prompt today on Monday is family of origin. I am lucky in that I have lots of pictures from when I was growing up. It was really interesting when I went back through them today. There are lots and lots and lots of pictures of the 3 of us kids together. There are also a lot of pictures of my mom with the 3 kids. There are less of all 5 of us together, and I thought that that was interesting to note. A lot of times when I'm doing projects like this, I really love to take advantage of the opportunity to think about what I wish I had, right? And how can what I wish I had inform the choices that I make today. In this case, simply knowing that I really love seeing pictures of all of us together can help me today when I'm taking pictures of our own family, of the reminder that I want to see all 7 of us together in our photos. And I have made an intent, or I've tried to do that over the years. Sometimes have been more successful than other times. You can imagine with 7 people, it's kind of hard to get everybody together, but it's definitely something that I really value and enjoy. So this is a great opportunity to think about that. With this project, as with all of our projects, if you don't have photos, there are ways to tell the story. So in my case, what I've decided to do, at least for today, tomorrow might look a little different. Sometimes when I'm doing these projects, I follow the same formula for each one of the prompts, and then other times I just kind of choose my own adventure on each day, right? What do I feel like doing today? You know, is my story longer? Is it shorter? Do I want to type my journaling? Do I want to handwrite my journaling? Those are some of the questions that I get to decide each day. Sometimes having a formula makes the entire process go significantly smoother because I'm following a formula and I'm just plugging in my content, right? I'm plugging in my photo here, I'm plugging in my journaling here, I'm plugging in some sort of pattern paper or creative play on the other side, and or switching those things around. Like maybe sometimes I would have a photo here, I would have my pattern paper here, and my journaling might still be here, right? Lots of different ways that you can do this. So if you don't have photos to illustrate your story, consider pattern paper. Consider going on the internet and downloading images from a particular point in time. On Instagram, when I was talking about this prompt today, I said, for family of origin, if you don't have a family photo of your family of origin, you could also include a selfie of yourself, right? Or a picture of yourself at any point in time. And then you can still document who were the people that were in your family, you know, when were they born? Where did you live? When I recorded a video, I think it was last week, talking about this project, I think it was last week, one of the things, maybe just in a blog post, one of the things I said too was that your approach in your journaling here can be very fact-based, or it can be very feelings-based, or it can be a combination of the two. If this is hitting you at a time in your life where telling longer stories about your family just is not where you want to be, you do not have to do that with this project, right? I never come to any of these projects saying, this is the only time I will ever write about my family of origin. I must get it perfect. I must tell exactly the correct story, and on, right? All the things that we could say to ourselves in our head. That's not my approach at all. My approach is significantly more, what's a story that I can tell about this today? You know, what's something that I can outline about this today? It might be longer, it might be shorter. It's just not, I never want to feel that sort of pressure on myself. So while I could take this picture and write up a long prose-based lots of sentences related to growing up. I think in this case, as somebody who's already told some of those kinds of stories, I've already documented some of those sorts of things in some other memory keeping projects. I think for this one, I'm going to focus on more of the facts, right? Who are we when this picture was taken? I'm going to actually include some stamping, and I'm going to put like 1983, which is when this particular picture was taken. Actually, kind of what I'm thinking I'm going to do is take this stamp set. This is one of our large number stamp sets. I don't know if this is one that we still have in the shop. I think it was probably from a December daily release a few years ago, but I'm thinking of like stamping 1983 in the background before I add on my journaling. So like a light stamp of 1983. That's my initial thought. So obviously this is going to get trimmed down and adhered right in here. And then I was going through my pattern papers from the scrapbook kits over the last year, and I think what I'm going to do is use this one, this particular pattern paper that I can crop down. And part of the reason why I like this one, I love circles, that's one of the reasons. But I also, on the pieces of the past stamp set, if you happen to have this, I really like the looking back. And so I think that I'm going to stamp that a couple times and then add that on here as an embellishment, and maybe dive back into my embellishments too and see if there's some other circle ones that I might want to add on top. Again, keeping my journaling pretty basic. I might use like pieces of my history. Yeah, I think that most likely what I'm going to do on here is just focusing on who we are. And again, I'm just going to handwrite it on there. I'm going to keep this one kind of light and simple in terms of the journaling, I think. So that's going to be my particular choice. All right, I'm going to dive in and you guys can see how this one evolves. All right, so as you guys are going to see as I work through this process, I start in one direction and then I actually change my mind partway through, and you're going to see and hear parts of that. Part of my videotaping didn't work, and I'll tell you when that part comes up too. So here in the first step though was adding in this circle pattern paper, and I trimmed it down just a little bit. I knew that I wanted to have the circles touch the edge because I knew that based on the width of the paper that the circles would be able to touch both edges. So that's something that I pay attention to, and you'll be able to see that here more in a minute. Rather than having like one row of full circles, I wanted both rows to be touching the edges, both on the top and the bottom, and with the middle, near the middle seam as well. I'm also rounding the corners, which is something that I always do in these notebooks. I just love how that looks. You'll also see a lot of times here where as I'm adding things in, I don't trim them all the way on my trimmer. I usually trim them part way on my trimmer, and then I do the rest of it after I've added it into the notebook. That allows me to make sure that I'm not cutting things too small before I add them into the notebook, so that I can control a little bit more of those margins. So you can see I either do the trimmer or I'll do scissors, kind of just depends on what's happening. All right, so next step in this process is I pulled out those large number stamps. And again, this is what the starting place, this is where I started, and this is what I end up cutting out, or covering up later on in this process. As I watched this back, I actually really like how this looks still, but it was more of the part that you don't see in the video is when I started writing everyone's names down below and like when they were born, and it just wasn't, that was the part that wasn't going how I wanted it to go. I actually really like how this looks. I love that scattered straw distress oxide ink for the numbers with the "we are" on top, and then I did a little layer of pieces of my history below that. But then I was like, it was really once I added in the names and that part that I didn't like it. So what I end up doing, which you're going to see in just a minute here, is I end up cutting that part in half. But before I do that, I'm going to add on some puffy numbers along the top, and that's going to come into play in how I end up telling the story here once I cut this other page up and add something else on top. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that in just a minute here. Okay, so as you guys have seen, I changed my mind a little bit about what I was doing here and ended up creating a flip open page. And this was mostly because what I did underneath there, I didn't end up liking what it looked like. And so sometimes when we don't like what things look like, or it's a mistake or whatever, sometimes that breeds really fun things. And in this case, it bred the fact that I could have a flip open page here. And so the reason why that is, in case you haven't seen these yet, but they have a blank page in between each of the prompts. And the blank page can be used for, you know, adding in more stuff if you want to add in, you know, more story, or you can do what I've done in the past, which is just adhering the pages back to back. Creates a little more stability in the pages, but also just moves from one prompt to the next. So the top part here with the photo got adhered to the second page, and then I left this open. I think the camera might not have been on. I used this We Are stamp. This was one that we released with the Week in the Life stamp sets, or Week in the Life release, and I just stamped that on white cardstock, so the repeated We Are. Underneath there, I had the date 1983, and that ended up I didn't feel like that was super important piece of it, and I can write this on here. I'm still kind of deciding embellishment wise. I also found this one when I went looking in my embellishments. I'm definitely probably going to use this, right? Every family has a story. The focus here, again, is on pieces of my past, right? So it's not like I'm trying to tell everybody's story here. But what I ended up doing is I actually went to my computer because I was like, okay, so if I had this space here, what could I type up, right? What could I type up that could go in this space that would be information about my family? And so I ended up setting this up where I've got content added on here, right? I've got some stories. I can tell though, I'm going to go back over there and reprint this again because I have the border on there. I need to take the border off so that it won't be along the bottom, and then extend this part just a little bit because I should be able to cut this out, have it fold essentially right in here. I'm going to reprint it anyway. I just did this on regular printer paper. I do have a color laser printer here, so that's what I use, but you can easily just run this through your inkjet printer, and I'll leave this for you guys. I know that this setup isn't going to fit for everyone either, right? Like it's not necessarily, you know, I had 5 people and then I used the other box for something else. So this might be something that you just need to set up for yourself in whatever program you have. I set this up in Illustrator and then put everything in there. And then I'm going to use the stamp set that repeats these numbers over here down along on the sides. So I'm going to remove the border and then reprint that. Just again, talking about what I did here, what I did was I measured this. And so it ends up being about 8.5 by a little bit less than 4. And so that's how I set up this box that I drew then. And you could do this in Word too, right? 8.5. Looks like it tried to print a little bit smaller. So let's see what this ends up looking like when I reprint. All right, so after I got that reprinted, again, I took off the border lines just so that I could not have those running up to where I was going to end up adhering that in. And the way that I chose to do this is I am folding it in half. You could also do 2 different pieces, right, that could go on one side and the other. I decided to try it to see if I could do it with folding. Remember, this is the paper that I'm using there is just regular copy paper. But by folding it, I knew obviously where that was going to go. Before I went ahead and adhered it, though, I did use the number set. This was released with December Daily last year. It was a 6x8 numbers. And on any of these stamp sets that you see maybe that I'm using that we don't still have available in the shop, you can always hit the notify me button in case that stamp set gets restocked and we offer it again in the future. So that's what I'm doing there. I love that those particular numbers are the same exact font as the puffy sticker numbers. And so I think that looked really fun that those 2 things can coordinate with each other. Then I'm using rolling adhesive to adhere that down in there. Again, just using it in the folded way. And then I went ahead folded way. It's very technical. Went ahead and used the rolling adhesive, and sorry, my head's in the way there too, to just get it all adhered down. This whole concept of like cutting the page in half to create a flap there and then adhering the top part down to the paper behind it, or this is going to sound super confusing, but anyway, This whole thing made me so happy. I love how it turned out. You can see there I also was adding some chipboard stars to the top. I started to do them on everyone, and then I changed my mind and just left it on top of myself there, designating me as the person who's telling the story. I had a plastic piece that is an add-on from the Family Story Kit a long time ago. I found this one in my stash. For those of you guys that were participating in the subscriber weekend last weekend, we talked a ton about organizing by shape. So I was able to go into that half circle space, or my half circle organizing space, and find one that would work for this story. I also restamped the looking back circle and then cut that out. And then the thing that I'm doing right now is I took one of the stamps that says pieces of my history and set that up in a half circle shape so that I could put it right on top. I also added 2 more chipboard stars there as well. So I've got 3 total across this spread. Love how that turned out. Super, super fun. All right, we'll see you guys back here tomorrow for the next prompt.